But Miss Angie is presenting on anxiety, regulating the nervous system. Both of us work here at the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic at Alaska Behavioral Health. If you are not familiar with us, we are an outpatient mental health clinic. We serve active duty, family members, veterans, anyone that's been impacted by the duty of a service member. So if you ever need us, we're here in Alaska. We also have an incredible agency that we work with or under with Alaska Behavioral Health that sees people from all walks of life. And then we also have CVNs across the country. So if you are not local here in Alaska, feel free to, let us know where you're at. And if you need help connecting to a CVN locally to you, we're happy to help you with that as well. In the meantime, as we're going through this, it is kind of a webinar approach. So Angie may not be able to see your questions or comments, but I will be monitoring those. So if you do have a question, please do drop it in the chat. Everyone should have access to be able to chat. And we will make sure we get those questions answered for you. So Angie, I'll hand it right over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandy. I appreciate it. Thank you all for attending here today. This is a good time for us to here at the clinic to kind of do something a little different. We typically see clients most days, all day, so it's nice to be able to meet with all of you, and thank you for sharing your time with us today. So I want to introduce myself. I'm Angie Salvato, lifelong Alaskan. I've born and raised here, and left a bit for college and have come back. I've been here at the Cohen Clinic about 2 years. I was a police officer for 22 years and retired in 2023 after to finish up my PhD in clinical psychology. So the Cohen Clinic was awesome enough to take me on as a pre-doctoral intern. And I finished that year and am doing my postdoctoral internship year now. So I am here full time at the Cohen Clinic. I have a full caseload, outpatient mental health. I do a lot of work with PTSD. I've been trained and do a lot of EMDR, cognitive processing therapy, and prolonged exposure. So have gotten to use a lot of these things we're going to talk about today with my clients, with myself over the years. So I'm happy to share them with you all. And like Brandy said, please put any chats in, any questions, and we will make sure to address them. This is not formal, although unfortunately we can't talk back and forth on video with you, but if you have chat questions or comments, please share those. We all can learn from each other. So great to have you all here. So today I'm just going to do a very basic discussion, talk about our nervous system. Something that I became very familiar with as a firearms instructor. This is kind of how I got involved in understanding the nervous system. I was a firearms instructor in Alaska for about 17 years. And when you see people shooting guns, you can see real quickly how the nervous system interacts with their motor system, with their breathing, their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills. And so I learned a lot in that role. And then now transitioning into the role of a clinician, can see how the nervous system plays out in our daily lives, interactions, sleep, eating, breathing, all of those things. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I've got a little PowerPoint here. Hopefully I can move through slides. Okay. So just basically, I'm certain that most people on here understand what the nervous system is, but to go over it real quickly, our whole body runs on our nervous system, right? From the feelings in our toes to our thoughts, all of that stuff. And typically we think of the nervous system as having kind of two sides. So the central nervous system is made up of the parasympathetic nervous system, or we can call that the PSNS, or the sympathetic nervous system. And so these are really important to kind of understand both. So a lot of times, and I'll refer to this as we talk today, the parasympathetic nervous system, I like to think of it as rest and digest. So hopefully right now, it's noon. Maybe you guys have had, a lunch. You're sitting somewhere cozy and warm. Hopefully you're not outside, even though it's beautiful to look out my windows here and see what's going on outside, but I'm safe and I'm warm. And so likely, if you're like me, your parasympathetic nervous system is hopefully dominating your day right now. Rest and digest. And so that's the side that, we think about, our stomach, our immune system is firing when it needs to fight the bugs. If it's a winter cold, our intestines are being stimulated by maybe some of our breakfast. And this can go all the way down to, what's going on in even our bladder or those things that we just need to kind of go through our day and live as humans. Then the other side of our nervous system, hopefully you guys don't interact a whole lot with, but we do um, have this other side of our nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, or SNS. And that's kind of, I think of it as fight or flight. And sometimes we know we're in sympathetic nervous system because maybe a car swerved into our lane on our morning commute, and immediately we went into kind of some automatic response to that. Maybe we slammed on our brakes, or maybe we took our foot off the gas and just what's going to happen, swerved out of the lane to kind of avoid a collision. And so that's typically an unconscious response. Sometimes it's something we've seen on TV before, or sometimes it's some experience we've had and our body just kind of goes into the unconscious response. So these are the two sides of our nervous system that we're going to talk about today. So like I said, rest and digest versus kind of that fight or flight when might even be red in the face, might be shaking a bit, have that rapid heartbeat and rapid breathing. So what can happen over time when we are constantly going in between fight and flight, or even some complex anxiety, maybe some stresses at work, and that's going on and off throughout the day. What's happening that we have this system, and it's referred to in a lot of science. You might read about this hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So our brain is talking to our adrenals all the way through this system, through the pituitary. And our body's communicating between these organs for essential stress management. So we are actually set up to deal with stress. If you think of us as hunters gatherers, right? Our bodies are set up to deal with a lion that's coming in to attack our tribe, right? And we deal with that, the critical stress, and then we get back to the tribe, we get back to our cave, we get back with our loved ones, and here comes cortisol to the rescue to recover and handle that stress. And so this feedback loop of hormones is constantly going on. And that's what I want to kind of bring your attention to today is as you go through the rest of today, I want you to try to notice if you're looking at something online or you have a project at work and you can start to feel this stress build up. And maybe it's not a full flight or fight or flight, we swerve on the highway, but maybe it's just our daily demands. You come home, oh, dinner's got to be made, and it's a very overwhelming stress. This is still happening in the background, that our organs are communicating to decrease our stress, to do the things we need to do and recover. And so as we know, as cortisol builds up, we can have problems if we're not managing this appropriately. But this is the essential, the cycle that's happening in our bodies. And this can be a dysfunctional process if it's too much, if we have too much stress, if we have too much cortisol. Like this is all about trying to find this homeostasis, this balance in this feedback loop. So maybe you're thinking, well, do I have HPA axis dysfunction? And why would this be happening? How would I even know? So we know that from science tells us that there is some genetics at play. Some people are more predisposed to deal less effectively with chronic stress. And as our world becomes more technologically savvy and all these demands get higher on us, there is then the interplay between that stress and your genetics. You can even call that like epigenetics, right? The change of our genetics based on our environment. Whoops. So it could be it's just the daily stress and you've got a lot of it. And in cooperation with your genetics, maybe there's a little more cortisol, a little bit less ability to deal with that stress. It can also be trauma, right? Something has happened to us. We think of kind of an analogy I like to use is when it comes to trauma, is imagine that there's a a fire, those things that you pull on the wall and there's a fire and we got to pull that. And then the alarm goes off in the building. A really intense trauma can yank that thing down so hard that the springs inside kind of break a bit and it won't go back into place. And then just a wind goes by and that trauma response or that sympathetic nervous system response could be just simply a look from a coworker or a partner. And then we're in kind of panic mode, right? So we need to do that work to heal that emergency response. Or we have pulled that handle so many times with small traumas over our lifetime that that spring wears out. And then just kind of an off comment from someone can cause that fight or flight, that internal anxiety and stress reaction to occur. And then there's, of course, the full diagnosis of PTSD can cause this dysfunction, this response of the sympathetic nervous system to be very quickly turned on by something in the environment, whether that's a trigger, whether that's a time of day even, or even a little bit of lack of sleep can cause everything to be a little bit more responsive in the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so maybe thinking about what's going on with you or people that you know that maybe are having some of these symptoms of the HPA axis dysregulation, these adrenal issues. Chronic fatigue and exhaustion. Are you waking up in the morning after a full night of sleep, 7.5 to 8 hours or so, and still feeling exhausted, tired, fatigued? You having some impaired memory, where things that you used to remember or came back quickly are just not there, that brain fog. Potentially you're having some body problems, or maybe some of the people you work with, clients that you work with they're complaining of these physical symptoms. One thing that comes up a lot with PTSD and some of this dysfunction, IBS problems can be, at least in police officers, veterans, active duty, that can be one of the first signs that maybe something's going on there. If you think about it, our rest and digest system is involved in, food going through our system. And if people are having IBS symptoms, diarrhea, constipation, it could be from that constant turning on and off of the rest and digest function. The fight and flight turns it off. And so how can you really get your food through your system if you're constantly in this SNS activation? So it maybe just being aware of these other things that you don't really think are associated with stress or stress reaction, but maybe something in the body, joint pains, muscle pains, aches, or just sensitivity to pain that you didn't have before. You used to be able to endure pain, and now every little one is pulling that handle on that fire alarm. Maybe you're noticing someone or yourself being just things that didn't used to tires you now. Now, some of this could be age, right? I'm 46 years old. So I went ice skating this weekend and I fell on the ice. The kids are falling 100 times. I fall one time and it hurts a lot more. So maybe some of it is aging, sure. But you are an expert on you, and that maybe like, this doesn't seem right. There's been a big shift in my ability to kind of recover from small injuries, or I just get tired so quickly. You're going to potentially see some of these symptoms might be coming to you, maybe some of your clients or people that you work with, as depression symptoms. So maybe we're looking at this through a depression lens when really it's a HPA axis dysfunction, because a lot of those low libido, weight gain, sleep problems, anxiety can show up in those symptoms. In the mental health field, we kind of have to look at this as with a lens of curiosity. And I try to look at, like, I think of it as a pond, and there's all these ripples, and the ripples are these symptoms, but there's rocks being kind of thrown in that pond, and which ones are causing the ripples? Which is it? Is it the trauma? Is it the HPA axis dysfunction that's causing these depression symptoms, these anxiety symptoms. And so being curious about kind of what's going on in people's lives, and this is definitely something to keep your eye on. Um, Distress tolerance or sorry, decreased tolerance for stress for sure. And we know that this type of dysfunction can play a role in aging disorders like Alzheimer's, dementia, things like that. Okay, so now we think, okay, we might have some of this going on. So what should we do? This is the only slide I'm going to talk about where I'm asking you to think, should we limit stress or should we heal the symptoms? And of course, I think we should do both. Um, but limiting stress is really hard. It's really hard in this world where we have a lot of demands on us and we have a lot of pressures from family, from work. But one that we can certainly try to limit, it's not a popular thing to do, but we have never experienced this level of trauma from our phones uh, anytime in our past 100, 200 years in generations. So we are daily seeing the trauma and stress of 8 billion people on your Instagram, on your Facebook, the news outlets. You're constantly seeing. I mean, we know we just experienced, worldwide some very serious mass shootings in the past couple of days, right? That's not something 100 years ago we would have heard about. Maybe through the grapevine, we'd hear about some traumas in our village or our community, but this instant access to the trauma of the entire world is a lot of stress for our body. And maybe even we're not realizing it at the time. But if you can try to limit some of that, maybe, and you guys are all experts on yourselves, but trying to kind of put aside a certain amount of time per day that you might be willing to let yourself access this. And I realize we have to stay in the know and we have to be informed, but realize the amount of stress that we're putting on our body by looking at that stuff all day and every day. So we can limit some of it there. We can, there's just take a minute right now and think, how can you limit stress? Because stress can be good too. Working out is stress. So there can be some good stress. So picking the good stress and the rewarding stress over the not so rewarding stress. I talk a lot about confirmation bias in therapy. We are kind of hardwired for negativity, and that's a survival mechanism. We are hardwired to kind of look out for danger and to look out for negativity. The guy or gal in front of you that cut you off in traffic, right? We're kind of we have a bias to kind of confirm that the world is dangerous. And so we really have to take some time. We'll talk a little bit about this on a further slide, but to look for that good, look for the good. And of course, we've seen this in therapy as gratefulness, journaling, or, trying to kind of write down the things we're grateful for, the things we're thankful for, the good things in our lives. But this has to be a practice, something that we also maybe set some time aside for. That can be done, whatever, maybe you do a nighttime ritual with your family to, go around the room and say something you're thankful for. Maybe it's a list every night before you go to bed. Maybe it's a prayer. These things we know in science causes us to kind of hardwire the positivity. Another one, especially around the holidays, that I like to really challenge my clients to do is to give more praise to others. We know that praise feels good and it releases a lot of those feel-good drugs like oxytocin, the love drug, and those things inside of our bodies. And maybe even some of our clients or some of us, our love language is words of affirmation or praise. But, I like to think my kids, I remember about fourth grade. Maybe this is true for some of you. But I remember when there was a switch where my kids became a little less selfish. And, second, third grade, they couldn't wait to get what they were going to get for Christmas. They couldn't wait to open their presents. Then there was a shift, fourth, fifth grade, where I remember my kids were so excited about the gifts they got for others. And there was that switch where they're, developmentally a switch where they're so excited to give something to others. And so going out of your way to give praise, whether that's taking 5 minutes to write that Google review about something positive that happened rather than just to have a complaint. Taking 5 minutes to like sincerely thank somebody for going above and beyond for doing something. And so that can really help limit our stress and cause us to have some of those feel good drugs. And then something we don't do very often, we do a lot of what's called upward social comparison, where we're looking online or news stories, or maybe it's on our social media for all of these things that other people have that we don't have. We do a lot of that naturally. Um, you know, that's part of our DNA a little bit is looking out and comparing ourselves. But what we don't practice or maybe even encourage our family to do a little bit more is that what's called downward social comparison, where we're looking for how lucky we are compared to others and how we can, you know, it seems like it's gone away a little bit more in the past decade or so, but when families really they served food and they went into the homeless shelters, or they went and they did things for their community, and kind of they were exposed to people who had less than them, and allowing ourselves to have that natural social comparison for gratefulness. And so really putting yourself in situations where you can just see how grateful you are, and how you have the things that can not be stressful to you. All right, so now switching gears to healing symptoms. Let's see if I can get this to switch here. Okay, so this stress reaction in our body, this central nervous system that's made up of both sides, SNS and PSNS, right? So the vagus nerve, I'm hopeful that most of you have heard of the vagus nerve. But as I have learned more about it, I can really see the impact of focusing on the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve that runs on both sides of our neck, kind of from basically our brain stem kind of down, and it contains about 75% of our PSNS nervous system fibers. It's actually communicating both ways from our brain to our body, but most of the communication is actually happening about 80% from our body to our brain. Our body telling our brain how we're doing. Digestion, heart rate, blood pressure, respirations, immune system, mood, right? All of these rest and digest functions. And it can help when SNS happens, when stress happens, then hopefully that vagus nerve, and we're aiming for a high vagal tone, right? For that to disengage the SNS system, to say, nope, I'm not in fight, flight, or freeze, right? I am in rest and digest, come back to homeostasis, to calm. And so this vagus nerve and vagus nerve stimulation is something that we have to kind of think about. And there's several things that we can do to increase that vagal tone and to reset our body back into this rest and digest, which we should spend most of our lives in. So, how can we stimulate the vagus nerve? I will say, kind of a side note here, there's been so much research in this kind of recently that I know that the VA just received a huge grant to give vagus nerve stimulators. So they're actually handheld vagus nerve stimulators that folks will put on their neck where their vagus nerve is. And so if you know someone who has maybe cluster headaches or PTSD symptoms, the VA, just have them reach out to their VA worker, and that VA person can potentially work with them, with their doctor, and get them a vagus nerve stimulator. But how can we all stimulate our vagus nerve if we're not to the point where we're having maybe cluster headaches or PTSD symptoms? These are all a lot of the things that we can do that I really encourage. What I'm doing right now is activating my PSNS. my rest and digest, I'm talking. And by talking, when we're in fight or flight, often you may remember you can't talk. You're in that emergency kind of, all your big muscles are firing. Your fine motor skills don't necessarily work, and sometimes we can't even talk, right? So the more we engage in talking, so there are some good things for just talk therapy, just talking about things, humming, singing, exercises like that can increase that vagal tone. Laughing, right? Just like singing, it can increase that vagal tone. We know that exercise is good for our brain. So the more that we exercise that good stress, now we don't want to over exercise, right? Because then we can go into that sympathetic nervous system. Deep breathing, and I have one, I think on the next slide, or one of the next slides here, that I like to encourage my clients to do. But any of the diaphragmatic breathing techniques, whether it's box breathing or tactical breathing or 4 count breathing, but that filling your lungs fully with air, as big as you can get your lungs, maybe holding for a few seconds, and then long breath out. We know that our body, when we breathe out longer than we breathe in, we know that our body is getting the message, our brain is getting the message, you're safe. You're not chasing tigers, you're not chasing intruders, you're safe with your people, and that can get us back into that sympathetic or that parasympathetic nervous system rest and digest. Cold exposure. Now we're, as Alaskans, we all probably have the ability to do this. Maybe it's just going outside, taking some deep breaths. Especially if you are in that emotional brain, that's fight or flight, triggered by something, even just some cold water on your hands, any of that glabrous skin, hands, lips, running your hands under cold water, getting some cold water on your face. The same with gargling is the same with singing or humming. You're kind of stimulating that vagus nerve. And so even like doing a quick reset with some cold water in your mouth, doing a little gargling. And we know that things like yoga and mindful meditation can kind of improve that breathing and get us back into rest and digest. So that's a nice handout I like to give to folks, clients I work with or family members. Um, and yeah, so just thinking about these things, remember, there's 168 hours in every week. If we only really think about these things 1 hour a week or something like that, probably not a lot is going to change. So there's no magic pill for any of this. It's trying to do a lot of this throughout the day. We'll talk a little bit more about each of these actually. So my favorite suggestion for diaphragmatic breathing is called VU breathing. Maybe some of you have heard VU breathing. It sounds a little bit goofy when you do it, but basically it's real simple. You're going to breathe in, big breath, hold, and when you breathe out, you say the words and hum VU, and you go until you run out of breath. So that VOO, saying VOO, is that humming, breathing all the way out as you say VOO. Not only you're incorporating the breathing, slowing that breathing down, that long exhale out, but that humming can increase that vagus tone, can tell your brain, okay, my body is safe. I'm good. Maybe I just got off Instagram and that was real stressful. So now I'm going to do, 5 minutes of VOO breathing. This is again not a magic pill, but something if you can put this into your day, maybe it's in the shower, maybe it's part of your bedtime routine, but doing this every day, maybe it's in the car, maybe you don't do it in Costco, I don't know, get some looks or so, but doing this VU breathing, I think is incorporating again both the humming and the breathing. Okay. I'm a big fan of yoga. I I know yoga can be intimidating to a lot of people. This QR code is just one of my favorites, only mostly because it's free online. It's called Boho Beautiful, and it's free on YouTube. And I think she does a really good job. Of course, I'm super jealous of her all the time because she's in a beautiful location like Costa Rica or Greece or something like that. Beautiful backdrops, but I think she does a really good job incorporating breathing, incorporating even a lot of therapy techniques, noticing your thoughts without judgment, letting them come and letting them go, not holding on to them, or maybe with curiosity but not with judgment, and letting them go. And there's all types of classes that are free online, whether it's just 5 minutes and you do it in your office, or whether you want to take maybe one of her more intense exercise related yogas. It's just a free one, that I found online that's easy to access. Let's see. So another way, something to think about, because I know we're all so busy and it's hard to, put aside, the 20 to 45 minutes in the gym every day. Gyms are expensive. But we know in research that research tells us that doing exercise snack breaks, which would be just maybe 1 to 2 minutes of intense exercise every 1 to 2 hours, can be just as good for you as going to the gym for 20 minutes in a day or 30 minutes in a gym, or running on a treadmill for 30 minutes. So we all have these things around our offices that we can do, whether it's a wall sit or body squats, but getting up from your chair, maybe setting a timer on your phone every 1 to 2 hours, run in place in your office, some jumping jacks. I mean, these are all the things that we did, in elementary school without a fancy gym, right? So whether it's wall sits, jumping jacks, burpees, plank, getting up out of the day-to-day monotony, maybe stress, and doing a little bit of exercise snack breaks, and just kind of thinking about them as a snack break, but for exercise. All right. So I'm going to switch gears here from kind of now our body now to our brain. So there's a lot of things, and then I alluded to this earlier in that kind of looking for the good, that confirmation bias. And I really recommend not necessarily the book Hardwiring Happiness. There's a book, Hardwiring Happiness. It's a great book, but it is a bit cerebral. It can get a bit boring. But there's videos, YouTube, TED Talks from the author of Hardwired Happiness. And this pulls from his model. So we are hardwired for negativity. We talked about that. That's a survival mechanism in us. The older we get, the worse it also gets. It's kind of like, seeing the negativity in the world. So how can we flip that? How can we fire those axioms together? Those axioms that fire together, wire together. We know that. We want to myelinate that axiom process of happiness, right? Instead of constantly myelinating the negativity axioms, right? So this is just a little cheat that he has in the book. It's heal. So we want to have a positive experience. So maybe it's you go ice skating with the kids and it's a beautiful day outside, and just really being in that moment, or even you can do this right now. You can think of a happy time you've had in the last week, maybe this weekend. I know it's a Monday, but kind of what is that positive experience? Thinking about a recent happy memory, that feeling of contentment, or even a beautiful day outside. We want to have that experience. And then we want to stay with that positive feeling for about 10 to 20 seconds more. So maybe it's an experience you have, but then you get done with it, you play charades with the kids, and you're like, well, that was fun. That was great. And sit with it for about 10 to 20 more seconds. Just notice the details, the senses, the emotions, just to make it more real, more vivid, logging that as a happy memory. Feeling that, so then absorbing it in even more. So we've added the emotions, we've added the senses, the details. Now we absorb it, let it sink in like a warm glow, letting it last and become an inner memory, a core memory of something good. This last one, link it, is optional. This is kind of the healing process of negativity and trauma. We can also link that positive feeling to even a negative thought or something negative that might have happened. And so hopefully over time, by linking it, and again, this part's optional, we can just do the kind of the hardwiring happiness part, but we can also start to heal some of those negative things that have happened to us by linking this current positive thing to it. And then hopefully that can override as we go forward the negative trauma or the negative stresses. So just kind of a quick little thing that we can all, try to do on a daily basis is again, just hardwiring happiness, looking for the good, staying in it for a few seconds after. And then my last suggestion, like if you need an external source to kind of help with some of this mindfulness, meditation, is this Healthy Minds app. I recommend it because it's free. I always hate those apps. So you got to kind of sign up for a free trial and then I forget to cancel it. And I've got these yearly subscriptions. So this one is free. You can download it, Healthy Minds. You can take the little assessment. It'll give you things to do throughout the day. But there's also just resources. It might be a 5-minute sleep meditation. It might be a wake up meditation. It might just be a talk about mindfulness and being present in the moment and noticing the good things in each moment. But I think there's a lot of resources on there that are kind of cool. Okay. And so kind of now the next part is we've got some good tools here. But as with anything, I say a lot like with Steph Curry, like, he doesn't just think through every three-pointer anymore, right? He's done that three-pointer so many times over and over that it is unconscious competence. When we learn something, we go from being, we don't know what we don't know. We are unconsciously incompetent at a new thing. So maybe that's breathing for you, or maybe that's de-stressing your life, right? It's going to be clunky at first. And we've got to, fire those neurons together to start making these things a habit, right? So we might be unconsciously incompetent at this new skill, whether it's breathing or whether it's, yoga, or whether it's looking for the good in life, and it might feel clunky and you might have to remind yourself. Maybe you have to put reminders in your phone. But we've got to practice this over and over until then we go from unconsciously incompetent and now we're consciously competent. We're doing it, but it still just feels difficult or demanding. And that calendar alert popped up again. I got to do my snack break. And so it might be clunky. And then we're moving along on our way to mastery, and we become more conscious, like we kind of finally mastery is really all the way to the end, that unconscious competence, right? Where we are now just automatically, it's funny, my husband will notice now, like I'll take this deep breath and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You got a deep breath." I was like, "Oh, good." Like I'm not stressed at all, but like I'm unconsciously practicing these kind of deep breathing techniques. And so now I'm like training him to not freak out every time he notices that I'm breathing deeply. But that was a sign to me that like, oh, this stuff is starting to get more, of a habit. So I'm starting to become more unconsciously competent and mastery in these things. But it's like anything else. You don't go to the gym and look to your physical trainer to get you some abs, right? And then after 30 sit-ups, you're like, "Where are my abs?" Right? Like, what happened? You're not a very good trainer. So we've got to practice this stuff. So that first part, de-stress, right? Be assertive to your needs, be assertive to your limits, put your own mask on first so that you can be there for other people. Because we're not really good to anybody if we aren't caring for ourselves. Again, a reminder, we're not designed for this fast-paced world, right? We're trying, I think maybe another couple thousand years and we might evolve into dealing with more and more stress. But right now we're seeing the side effects of the vicarious trauma, the repeated traumas that we see in other people. And remember, we got to start somewhere. this myelination, the axioms, the more that the nerve goes through that course of different movements or breathing or whatever we're practicing, those positive thoughts, whatever direction we're going through the axiom pathway, that myelin sheath is getting stronger and stronger each time we perform that task, whether it's positive thinking, whether it's deep breathing, whether it's yoga, whether it's putting our phone down and walking away. That myelination is getting stronger and stronger and stronger every time we practice it. Of course, sometimes we need accountability buddies. So maybe just checking in with a coworker, like, hey, here's my winter snack break exercise. Like, let's commit together to put in a reminder on our phone to get up every hour or two and do 1 to 2 minutes of movement. Of course, there's also trainers, whether that's therapy or even just a good friend, someone to check in with about it. All right, so I'm wondering if we can just take a minute to kind of, I know it's a lot of information, probably it's not all overly super new to any of you, but just take a minute to kind of reflect. I'd love it if people could write in the chat like something that you might take away, something that you might put into your week or to your day, something that sits with you. I see someone wrote something about cold exposure. That's great. But is there something that sits with you that you might be willing to add to your day, to your week? Something maybe you already do. Oh yeah, the heal. I like that. Just kind of take a minute to really absorb these positives. Oh, yeah, something I really didn't talk about, but staying hydrated. Absolutely. As I drink my dehydrating coffee. Yeah, in the book, Hardwiring Happiness, one thing I think about a lot is he talks about every day he forces himself to sit in his office and he brings an orange to work every day. And he peels the orange and he forces himself to look at this orange as the spray comes off of the peel, as he looks at each part that he eats. And he's like, this is amazing. This grew on a tree. Like, look at the intricate detail of an orange or a snowflake, or how often do we do those mindful moments where we are just in awe of the things around us, whether it's we talk about in like compassion focused cognitive behavior therapy, mundane task focusing. You're washing the dishes, how often do you notice the feeling of the warm water on your hands, and allowing yourself to have some of that good internal feel good drugs to kind of give you a little boost back into kind of healing that nervous system. Movement, brain breaks, yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, does anyone have any questions? I know that was a kind of down and dirty, quick overview of our nervous system and ways in which we can help regulate, heal. Okay.
Awesome
Well,
job. Thank
yeah.
you, Angie. I appreciate your presentation today. It was amazing. I did just drop a link in the chat for our follow-up surveys. Everyone that attended today will also get that through an email. If you don't have time to do it right this moment, it'll circle back around to you tomorrow. If you get a chance, we love, feedback so that we can continue to grow the series and learn from it and just bring it to you each year after year. So if you have any questions, you will also have my email through that. Feel free to send those to me, and I'm happy to connect with Angie and either get those answered or forward the questions to her, whichever seems to fit. So we are here if you need us, and I'll hang around for a few minutes just in case anybody else wants to unmute or drop any questions. And you'll have a great week. We'll see you next Monday.
Thank you all.
All right. It doesn't seem like we have any last minute questions, so thank you so much, Angie.
Thanks. Good to see you. Bye.
Bye.